Hello, I am Katie Holloway.
And I am Graham Nichols.
And I'm Mark Bentham.
You're listening to Ordinary. How you doing, guys?
Excited.
Cold and miserable we are. You're excited.
Cold and
you're excited and
cold. Cold and excited. It's nearly Christmas.
I was going to ask you, Mark. I was expecting you to fully be in a Christmas jumper today, actually.
Oh, now, when does one bring out the Christmas jumper? It's a very good question.
I think
it's probably coming out soon. I would imagine in the next week or so. And the temperature is just getting into that temperature drop. Advent, firstly it's this weekend, isn't it? So maybe time. I like to call it a winter jumper, actually, though, Katie. It gives you greater scope. If you call it a Christmas, it's limited to a very particular season. If you call it a winter jumper, you can wear it in January as well. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I've got some that are like sort of festive in their pattern, but nothing actually Christmassy that I wear November to February.
Oh, it's a
Would you call what you're wearing today a Christmas jumper?
Me? No, this is sheep.
A winter jumper. I know sheep, but then
year round.
yeah, I know, but sheep. I know sheep are universal. They can be all kinds of parts of the Bible story, but shepherds in the fields and all that.
Sure.
So
no, I never. I live in England, Graham. I wear this in the summer. I've never considered it a Christmas jumper.
I haven't got any Christmas jumpers.
One. What's that? Sorry.
I haven't got any Christmas jumpers officially.
You haven't got any?
No. Why would I have a Christmas jumper? It's not cool.
In whose opinion is it not cool?
I don't know how to answer that.
It is officially very cool.
Either that it's not cool that you are. It's a broad spectrum of coolness, and we all fall on it somewhere.
Do we? That's the question. Is it possible to not be cool?
Some of us don't.
No. Well, says the lady with sheep on her jumper. If you're not watching on YouTube, you're missing a treat.
There you go.
Yeah, I saw an excellent Christmas jumper that someone showed me a picture of the other day, and it had a nativity scene on it, and then it said, "Spoiler, he dies." And I thought, and I liked it, but then I thought, is that good taste? Is that too irreverent? But my instinct was good talking point.
I think I'm with you. It's true, isn't it? It's not like it's not true.
True. I mean, whenever else is a baby born and we're celebrating the birth of a baby, getting quite excited about the fact that this baby's going to die, like it's a weird thing when you think about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, but he also brings life and risen and raised. We're not just celebrating his death that ends in nothing. That would be weird. But the fact that he's risen, I think is all right.
Yeah, it's okay,
and reigning and ruling and alive. That's the greatest spoiler.
Yeah.
He died and in risen.
Quite. Yeah. We're talking about Advent today. Have either of you got an Advent calendar yet? Do you ever have Advent calendars?
For my children?
Not for yourselves?
Sadly, I think this year we have got a joint family one, but, I'm not sure how many.
You got 4 bits of chocolate in each?
Yeah, exactly. Take it in turns, allegedly. Let's face it, I'm not going to see any of it. So I might, maybe I'll see one. Who knows? Depends how it goes. Maybe I'll enforce it.
I haven't got one at all. I'm not even sure if we did some for our children. I can't remember.
Oh, Graham.
I know. Well, it was the kind of life
story
they had.
Here on Ordinary.
They've broken out of it now, and they've all grown up, and they're probably eating chocolates every day of their life after the miserable upbringing they had. Yeah, I think we did have sometimes, but it's not good eating chocolate every morning.
There are Advent calendars without chocolate. Just putting it out there.
I know.
True.
There are Advent calendars with nativity scenes. I know. Controversial.
Well,
I usually spend January waking up first thing in the morning thinking, I've got to have a piece of chocolate. And it's a hard habit to break.
Well, why not just carry on throughout the year?
Sometimes I just do, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
That would be the awesome calendar of all calendars, wouldn't it? 365 days where you get a chocolate every morning.
It's that countdown to glory instead of just Christmas, just every day.
The fastest countdown to glory ever. Just keep eating chocolate every day. Boom.
It could speed it up, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, depends how much chocolate you eat.
Indeed.
A little bit. What you fancy does you good, as my grandma says.
But yes, it's a well-known saying. Advent calendars line up with Advent the season, don't they? Sort of, but not quite.
They do. Is that your segue into this episode?
I think so. Only because I'm not a Church of England person, and so I'm I mean, the Church of England tend to be a bit more into the whole Advent season, and this is the third Sunday of Advent or the first Sunday of Advent, all those sort of things. I don't think we talk about that much. So we might say, we're starting our Christmas series or whatever. We won't probably say it's the first Sunday of Advent, whereas if you're Church of England, you would. So you're much more keyed into it.
But we are starting our Christmas season's preaching on the first Sunday of Advent.
Well, we are indeed. And and we often do there or thereabouts. But I just think we're not so precise about it.
No, we don't have a nice candle, although I'd like one to light. I think it would be a nice thing.
Yeah, my first ever church that I went to was an Anglican church, and that's where I became a Christian. And then when I went to uni, I started going to just an evangelical church, and that was my first, and then coming to Christ Church now. It was my first real disappointment as an adult that Advent came along and we didn't have that little wreath with the candles, and you do one for the Mary and one for the Magi and whatever. I just can't remember what they are now.
The Good Book Company, I think, it was being recommended anyway, they've got an Advent candle where you've got... Was it who, sorry?
10 of those.
10 of those, was it? Sorry. Yes, of course it was. 10 of those. And they've got an Advent candle where you burn a certain segment and it has a name of God for each segment. Name of Jesus. Or
I'll get one of those.
Yeah, no, we used it a few years ago.
Will they send me one if I review it on Ordinary?
Possibly.
No, they won't.
Some listener could buy one. There might be someone from 10. Might be someone from 10 of those listening.
You never know.
We used one a few years ago from 10 of those and other suppliers.
Was it good names, useful names that you could talk about?
Yeah, they're all the names of Jesus and the Lord. All the ones that you'd expect and more.
And were they like on the side or on the top? I couldn't quite work out where you got the name.
They're along the side and along the day. So day 20, day 1, Emmanuel, day 2, whatever.
So you have to read it before you burn it, otherwise you'll...
Absolutely, otherwise you're in trouble. But it's a fun thing. The boys enjoyed lighting the candle.
Yeah,
it took a while to burn down. That was the only problem. And
twiddling your thumbs each day while it...
and the other problem we had was that we didn't have a suitable candlestick holder to hold it in, which we then had to rectify at some point. But they're just some top tips. Buy yourself a candlestick holder. Nice. Trying to use blue tack in a egg cup doesn't quite work so well. Just saying.
Top tip.
Not that we would have done anything like that.
There you
I think it was more like something else. But
Ordinary, full of practical wisdom for your family life.
There we go.
Graham, when we say Advent, what do we mean?
Yes, Graham, your Anglican background and knowledge. We're in your robes and your coloured stole today.
I have lots of lots of Christmas history, but Advent I'm not so good at. But I think we mean the season in the lead up to the birth of Jesus that is celebrated on the 25th of December for reasons that I recently rediscovered, as it being the 25th, which is all to do with the fact that some people thought Jesus died on exactly the same day he was conceived, because that was a Jewish tradition. So that's why you end up with the 25th of December, because you work out when Jesus died, the date when Jesus died, and you say that was when he was conceived, and so 9 months after that is when
he was born on his due date.
Yes,
5% of babies are. I learned that at the weekend.
Yes. So that's why, and I was reading a book on church history. So it wasn't a book on Christmas. It was a book on church history and the divisions, the Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox and the Western Church, and why they decided on different dates for Christmas Day.
But the one thing we're all agreed on is that he probably wasn't born in December.
I don't think we are all agreed on that. I like to think that it may be accurate, because nobody quite knows. It's a bit of a fashion thing. It goes in and out of fashion as to whether it's like.
Well, I guess it's whether the shepherds were tending their sheep and lambs up in the on the hills of that part of the year.
Yeah. See amid the winter snow and all that. I mean, that's in the Bible, isn't it?
Yeah, because it snows regularly in Israel, I'm sure.
And robins. There were robins in Israel as well, and and of course there was that famous character.
Don't go there, Graham. Don't go there.
The Grinch. You mean the Grinch, right?
Oh yeah, that'll do.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, lovely. So where did it come from? This Advent thing? Is it in the Bible? Is it when did it start? Where did it come from? Why do we recognise
I think Mark
it?
should answer that one.
Go on, Mark.
Well, I'm not sure anyone really knows how it started, but from my readings, it was established quite early on, like about 480 or something like that, they reckon. So it was just part of the church calendar, how things remembered and celebrated. So it's not like it's a biblical law and festival, like the Festival of Tabernacles or the Passover as it was under the Old Testament law, but it is a season that we recognise. We recommend it as well. But so I think it just became part of church history. Then other things developed, probably sadly and wrongly, from other sources that aren't so helpful, like saints and worshipping days of saints. But I think Advent's one of those where you think, it's a good thing to prepare your heart ready for the arrival of Christ. And if you, when you consider that up till recently, and still in most people's minds, the whole of our calendar system is marked by his birth.
Yeah.
Why would you? Therefore, it is the greatest event, his arrival into this world. Why would you not prepare your heart and get yourself ready to celebrate that properly and rightly, particularly as believers? It's our greatest joy and our greatest celebration. As it points to his death, as we've said, but in one sense, him entering the world, that the God of the universe would enter, is something to pause, consider, and ponder. And I think for us as believers, in this day and age, where Christmas has become so much else, so much more than what it, the celebration of Christ, being able to slow down and just say, okay, for these few weeks, I am going to just slowly think about, prepare my heart to celebrate the arrival of Christ.
Yeah, I think
that's really interesting. Just to say, it's really interesting because it takes the focus away from the actual Christmas day in the present. So I think it does have a benefit in that sense, stretching it out. Because I'm a bit skeptical about these kind of seasonal things, because it's like you're trying to replicate the Old Testament, but not quite.
Sure.
With seasons and feast days. But I can see the benefit in the way you're just describing it.
Yeah. So more as a time of preparing our own hearts, collectively and individually, to celebrate Christmas, but in helping us to do it in a more true way to what Christmas actually is.
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the comparisons is I always feel when you think Easter is the great celebration for us as believers, death and resurrection, it suddenly just seems to come out of nowhere. We have no prepared season. Suddenly just Easter arrives, and often it can feel like, oh, it's Easter again, and not the greatest celebration. And we have Lent, but we again don't make much of Lent. But again, how do we prepare ourselves for these events? Not because we're trying to enact some religious ceremony, but because we recognise the real significance, importance of them, that enables us to slow down and connect properly with the meaning and purpose, rather than just get to the day and kind of becomes, hey, day of fun. But actually, we Christ gets pushed to the side, both at Christmas, but also at Easter. I think Easter's an interesting one. Anyway, that's a different podcast series.
It is, and I'm sure we'll come to that in the spring. So yeah, Advent I think can fly under our radars a bit, especially in the evangelical church, or in a non-Church of England church. Is this a reflection of that? Do you think that maybe we've lost sight of the Christ in Christmas, or maybe we've just lost the amazement of the incarnation? Could it be a reflection of that, Graham?
I don't know whether we've lost. I mean, we may from time to time lose it. I think it's like there's benefits and disadvantages for Christmas being a big thing. I am still positive about the idea of Advent and a slow lead up, but it is weird that if I were to preach a sermon about Jesus' birth in August, everyone would think this is weird. But there's no good common sense theological reason why, but everyone would think it's weird, and they think, oh, it's the wrong time of year. So that amazement about the nativity, about the coming of Jesus Christ, the coming of God the Son in the flesh, it would be nice if we celebrated it all year round a bit more. But yeah, I'm not so much sure that in free churches we've lost the sense of wonder so much as I think we are just maybe a bit too skeptical about prompts and seasons and all the stuff we were talking about, and that probably makes us a bit bit too sort of focused on just, or historically in our church and other churches like us, I think just focused on maybe a sort of a weekend or 2 weekends rather than a bit of a longer period.
I think it's our non-conformist heritage, isn't it? You know, it's us not wanting to conform to what we perceive as, you know, man-made festivals, seasons in the kind of established church.
Yeah, well, it's not quite true, but you know, the Puritans are famous for not celebrating Christmas, and it's a bit more complicated than that. But I think Oliver Cromwell banned it. I think, and there was very sort of Puritan views. So we're in that kind of line, probably a bit more than the sort of established church line.
And I think actually, if we're not careful, we come across as miserable.
Yeah,
you know? Like in one sense, I want to reclaim it because I think it's such not that I want to, you know, have festivals and Graham and I wearing robes and all sorts of stuff. But if we truly believe, which we do, that, you know, this is Christ, you know, the Son of God, Emmanuel himself entering the world, why would we not want to make much of that and celebrate that and delight in that? And part of me thinks that we can be so afraid to not be like the world that actually we do the opposite. We kind of dampen it down. And I want to say, no, let's reclaim and make much of, because this is a great celebration. This is something so amazing. Let's sing and dance and have feasts and festivals about it.
Yeah. Maybe
not so much festivals, but feast and dance and celebrate.
Certainly mince pies and Christmas carols.
Amen.
Yeah. What can we do then as individuals and as churches as a whole? What can we do to prepare ourselves for Easter? Christmas. Well, I mean, it's both, isn't it? You know,
let's
we
just
can't
go
really
for that long
separate
running.
Yeah, start on the Easter eggs. What can we do to prepare ourselves for Christmas in our hearts, especially as it's just such a busy time of year with nativity plays and things you've got to do and people you've got to see? How can we, you know, wonder in the incarnation better?
I think you've got to prepare. I'm not into the idea of you've got to prepare our hearts for Christmas Day sort of thing, or prepare our hearts to receive Jesus, because hopefully we have.
Yeah.
But I think you got to think carefully, what do I want out of it in a consumer sense? But what would I like this Christmas season to reflect in my walk with Christ? And there are ways you can deliver on that. There's resources like we're reading through a particular book as a church based on the book of Ruth, but some Advent readings. So we often recommend Advent readings. That's a way of slowing down and reflecting. And I think it is worth thinking. It doesn't work if you just suddenly decide on Christmas Day that your whole focus is going to be on presents and who's going to come round, or whose house you're going to go to or not go to in protest, and all the focus is on that. You can't then suddenly expect to suddenly get spiritual for an hour when you turn up at a service. It is about consciously thinking, I want in amongst all the other stuff that's going on, I want to be conscious of Christ in my life and the birth of Christ, and to be reflecting on it and talking about it and including it in my prayers and not just tacking it on. I think that is the danger, that we tick the box of, we're going to go to carol service, we're going to go to Christmas Day service, and that's really good that we do. But you can't expect your psychology to turn around that quick, that you're totally immersed in everything else, and then suddenly, let's just think about Jesus for 5 minutes, and then we'll go back to doing what we were doing before. And you know, we're sincere in that 5 minutes, but it's probably not enough. So it's kind of forcing yourself to think, I really want to concentrate a bit more on the birth of Christ at this season. So doing things consciously, intentionally, that's the funky word people use.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Do you like Christmas, Katie?
Yeah, I love Christmas.
Is that because of the childhood, you're trying to get back to childhood, or you love it because you're super pious and think it's because it's the birth of Christ?
When I was little, I mentioned before, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. So when I was little, Christmas was very Father Christmas presents, one year my mum sprayed snowy footprints up the stairs.
Oh, nice.
And I genuinely, I think I was 6 or 7, and I just genuinely thought, and I loved that, but I was also a little bit frightened of him because I didn't know him and he was coming into my bedroom.
It's a freaky thing, that, isn't it? Really, when you think about
isn't
it.
it?
Yeah.
So now I became a Christian, and then it took on a whole new, like, I think even as a child, you know, at school and things, and I was a brownie, and you'd go to church once a year and they would talk about the birth of Jesus, and I found it attractive and appealing, and I wanted to celebrate that, but I didn't really know how or why. So I think even then I had this longing for it, and then I became a Christian, and it was, you know, new. And then you know, then when I got married, and I was, you know, my husband is a Christian, and then it took on a whole new thing. And then when we had kids as well, and they're just at the age where it's properly fun now with the kids as well, to get their kind of wonder of it all. So yeah.
What's the wonder? What's the wonder that they feel, your kids?
I think it is Jesus. Or is it Jesus? My daughter is nearly 7. She's 7 at Christmas. Is very sincere in her faith, and she really challenges me by how earnest she is in it. So I think she is just amazed that that God became a baby. Like she understands that, and she also knows that she sees babies around, and she's like, but God became one, and it blows her mind. And then that blows my mind because she's experiencing it a bit more really than me, who's got all these other layers of stuff built up.
Yeah, she's experiencing it sort of naturally, in a sense, viscerally. And I love that word wonder. I think it's a great word in the Christian faith, wonder. You know, you wonder at God's grace, you wonder at the nativity, you know, you wonder at God's big plan of salvation, you wonder at the cross. It's a really good word for Christians to use.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I think as well, that kind of attitude, I think as a mum now as well, especially mum of kids who are now old enough to understand and want things, I am starting to feel the stress and the pressure of it. The last couple of years with like lockdowns and stuff, it's felt a bit easier. But this year I found myself feeling a bit humbuggy because of my to-do list and all these nativity plays I've got to go and see. That it feels long and it's extra stuff I've got to do. But I think if we observe Advent well, I think it helps us to change gear a little bit. Because actually, even this morning, I was thinking, I don't really want to come on and talk about Advent. It feels too early. I'm not up for it. It's rainy. It doesn't feel Christmassy. But I wonder if that is the whole point. We don't need to feel Christmassy, but this truth of the incarnation, if we dwell on that a bit more. Mark, I wonder if you could, just for a few minutes, talk about that, the incarnation, like what that actually means. Give us some things that we could sink our imagination into as we are remembering this doctrine, which we forget about, I think, for a lot of the year. Well,
I mean, you've begun to touch on it, haven't you, in terms of God becoming, a baby, and just actually thinking about what that entailed for him. We get a sense of it in Philippians 2, whereby he gave up his rights, as it were, to be God and to constrain himself to a human nature, whilst also holding to a divine nature. So he's, two natures, one person, and yet this human nature. There's a wonderful. What's the song we? Is it Totally God, Totally Man?
Yeah,
where,
it is.
He talks about. It's a great one where he talks about he had to learn how to speak, he had to learn how to write his name, he had to, the one who flung stars into space had to do those very actions. And I think just as you slow ourselves down to kind of marvel.
I'm so sorry for that. Sorry, Mark.
What happened?
Isaac may have to do a little bit of work on that.
I'm not sure what happened.
What happened?
I think you're the only one who experienced anything.
My phone started ringing, but you may not have heard it because it may have been sufficiently in the distance.
We didn't hear it.
No.
Oh, sorry. Carry on.
That's all right. It's all part of the script.
I'll have a cough now.
Yeah, a little cough, have a little break, and right back. Now here we are back thinking about the incarnation again. just that sense of wonder at what God would do, and when you then slow it back down again and you think, actually, we are a wicked people, who have rejected God. And, the Old Testament stories are just people who rejected. And then in the midst of it all, in comes this amazing narrative, an angel suddenly turning up to this virgin, this young woman, expressing that, she's going to give birth to, the Son of God. And that he then enters into the world in this kind of backward town in the middle of nowhere, really. And you're just going, how we would have never come up with this story. That's the thing, is that if you were thinking about how is mankind going to be saved, how's mankind going to be rescued, you would never come up with a story that involved a baby being born in a manger, and then kind of growing up to die to rescue, in that sense. And that then hinges the wider narratives that we all delight in, but it originates with God. So I think just some ideas. And then you kind of spin off, don't you, into the whole Christmas and nativity story of shepherds and being wowed and wise men travelling for months and months to visit this child and bowing down and worshipping, adoring, fully grown wise men worshipping a baby.
I've heard somebody, I can't remember what it was on now, but somebody was talking about that Advent really is a time of waiting. You're kind of waiting. And I read something this morning that Advent originally had a kind of a dual purpose, that it was waiting for Jesus, looking forward to Jesus coming, but also looking forward to Jesus coming again. So very much that kind of waiting time. Is that something that's helpful for us to practice? I think with those with kids in your house, Advent's all about waiting, because they're waiting for their presents. And mine too already. How many days is it till Christmas? Is that waiting something that's good and helpful to practice, like patience? Is this a good time for that? And also just the fact that there aren't many opportunities to practice patience these days, because we've all got streaming services where you don't even have to wait for your next episode. Loads of people have next day or same day delivery on stuff. We're not in the habit of waiting. So Graham, what do you think about that? Is this a good time for that?
As someone who's not very patient, I think waiting techniques are good. I think bound up in Advent is the idea of waiting. But I think that's a biblical idea. You think about Anna and Simeon waiting for the kingdom. So there was lots of people, or at least a significant number of people in Israel at the time, waiting for the kingdom to dawn. And in the same way that they kind of waited for it to start, in a way we wait for it to finish, as in the earthly story, until Jesus comes again. So it's a good term. It's a good mindset. So a bit of wonder and a bit of waiting is a good thing to do. And the thing about waiting for Jesus to come again is it's not so much a patience thing like the waiting for a bus, and we just learn to be patient. There is a waiting in hope and expectancy that then governs our behavior now. So it's not like the suppression that patience needs to be sometimes, which is, controlling our emotions and stopping until the thing happens. That's sometimes how we think about patience, or we think about waiting. We're waiting for a bus. We might use the time wisely, but basically we're waiting for that thing to happen. But the waiting for the final advent of Christ, when he comes to rule on the new heavens and new earth, is a waiting, but we're doing lots of stuff with certain hope, but because we know it's coming, we live in certain ways. So it's not like a suppressive kind of waiting, like I just need to just sit still and wait, and be patient. It is patience enduring things, but it's getting on with stuff as well.
But and into that though, I think actually what you were talking about, your kids get counting down the days to Christmas. They're getting excited.
Yeah,
and I think actually, it's not just we're waiting and getting on with stuff, but we're also meant to be getting excited. We are supposed to be excited by the fact that Jesus is coming again. And I think Christmas just allows us to get excited. as we remember his first coming, we look forward to that second coming. So we don't want to detach those emotions, that there is an excitement. And actually the picture of kids getting excited for Christmas Day and the presents is probably a great picture for us, that, we're waiting for the greatest present, the Lord Jesus himself to return.
Yeah. And the other picture of waiting, of course, is that of a bride getting ready for her husband. And that's when you're talking about counting down. I think that's the only other time in my life that I've really had that. How many days was when I was waiting to get married. And I wonder if that's a good picture, especially of the second coming as well, that you're waiting with an expectant hope, but at the same time, there's stuff to be done in terms of practical stuff, but preparing your hearts and your character as well. There we go. Advent, wonder and waiting,
and excitement,
and we don't have to be. Sometimes I wonder if we think, as a child, if I ever did go to church, there was the expectation that you don't have too much fun, because that would somehow ruin the true meaning of Christmas if you're smiling or something, which I think is not the case in most churches these days, but certainly not how we would want to approach Advent.
I think we want to have fun. I guess it's always the question: what do you want to have fun about? There's loads of things to have fun about, and there's lots of fun. So we can have fun about things that aren't specifically directly theological, but I guess we don't want to give the idea that there's a load of fun we have to invent around the Advent and the nativity story in order to make the rather boring story a bit more palatable. So we want to make it all fun, but we want to make it fun because it's a context of it all being fun and the story itself being fun in the sense of exciting, wonderful, liberating, gives us joy, all those sort of things that come from the story itself. And all the other laugh we have kind of around it is because the central thing makes us laugh and brings us joy.
It does. You could say that a bit more joyfully, Graham.
I was,
add some to your tone of voice.
I was going into my lecturing mode. So
be fun, have fun.
If you're watching on YouTube, you might have seen I smiled, but
yeah, does happen on occasion.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.